Welcome to the Sales Gravy webinar, the top 3 pitfalls to avoid when hiring salespeople. This is Jeb Blunt, CEO of salesgravy.com, and I'm proud to welcome Kendra Lee, who is president and founder of the KLA Group. She's got 20 years of experience helping salespeople in small businesses improve sales performance and grow their organizations. She's a specialty in IT in the SME segment, and she is the award-winning author of Selling Against the Goal. And Kendra is also one of my very good friends. Please join me now for 3 top pitfalls to avoid when hiring salespeople.
We aren't necessarily very good at hiring salespeople because, of course, what's the one thing that they're all out there to do? They're out there to sell themselves. And so you can quickly find yourself with a salesperson who is really not as good as you thought when you hired them. And there are several challenges that we have seen our clients encountering when they are trying to hire that causes them to fall into different pitfalls, as I called it. Their situation usually is, that they've lost a sales rep and they need to replace that rep. Or they've figured out that they need a rep to achieve their target. One client that we work with this year figured out that to make their number, they actually had to hire. They thought they were in a good position, but when they stepped back and they looked at really how much is an average sales rep selling based on the quotas that were assigned, that they actually were going to have a gap. And so you may be in that position where you need to hire a rep just so you can achieve your target. Well, one of the other challenges is that when you're in hiring mode, because these salespeople are so good, they're often selling you and making you feel like they're in high demand. I can't tell you how many sales reps I interview who say, oh yes, I'm interviewing with 3 other places and I'm expecting an offer any day now. So they create that sense of urgency, and a company feels like, oh, I better not go through my whole interview process because I'll lose that rep. They're going to be snapped up by someone else. And then they get into the mode where, well, I better sell the rep on wanting to work for me instead of working for another company. So these are all challenges that are going on when you're in the process of hiring a sales rep. You want to get that rep on board so somebody can start selling so you can meet your number for the year. You don't want that rep, that great rep, to get snapped up by another company, and you feel like you really have to sell them to want to work with you. So I'm going to talk with you today about the top 3 pitfalls that we see our clients falling into when we work with them as they're concerned about losing that great sales rep or hiring the first person that comes along, because that's another big pitfall that we see. And the 3 that I'm going to talk about are that streamlined interview process so we can hire somebody right away, the non-motivating comp plan, and I'm going to show you some different things you can do there, and depending on your company, you may or you may not have flexibility over your compensation plan, but you might have flexibility over bonuses and some discretionary funds that you can use. And then there is the whole onboarding plan and how important it is. You're in your mind, you might be thinking, I'm hiring a really experienced rep, so they don't need any training. But the reality is, even your most experienced sales reps need a degree of training so they can come up to speed quickly. And we've done studies around the onboarding where we have discovered if you are hiring a sales rep who is, let's say, a competitive hire, they already know your solutions and are just coming over to your company, you can have them onboarded quickly if you've got a training program, but it'll take you 3 months to bring them up to speed, or I should say it'll take them 3 months to come up to speed. If you're hiring somebody who is not from your industry, but sells the way that you need them to sell, so they sell consultatively or they sell from a solutions perspective, it can take them 6 to 9 months to come up to speed, depending on how different the solutions are that they're going to be selling and how quickly they can grasp them. Jeb mentioned we do a lot in the high-tech industry. Well, if you bring someone in from outside high-tech and they have to learn the technology, it can take them 6 to 9 months to really get their arms around what it is that they're selling, which will slow them down. And then if you bring someone in who, let's say, sells solutions, but you want them to sell consultatively, in our experience, it takes them a year to make that transition from just selling solutions to being more of a consultant to their customer. So the interview process that you use, the compensation plan, and the onboarding plan all impact how quickly this salesperson is going to come up to speed for you. Now, so let's start with our streamlined interview process and what happens here. The challenge that we have is that you want to hire very quickly. And oftentimes you might be short-staffed and you need that salesperson right now. So typically what we see happening is that clients are trying to reduce the cost of their hiring, condense it down, and make a decision very quickly. I mentioned the one client that we're working with who analyzed their historic results, and he recognized that they were not going to achieve their revenue target for the year if they didn't bring on board more salespeople. Well, his sales reps, he determined, could sell $750,000 a year. Last year, he had lost 2 sales reps right after several big, huge deals had closed. So the financials last year made it look like he was okay without replacing those 2 sales reps. But when he actually got under the numbers in January and he was assigning out quotas, he figured out that to cover his cash flow, he needed to replace those reps. And then to meet their growth projection, he needed to hire a 3rd salesperson. So now, here he is, the beginning of May, looking at the calendar, not having brought anybody on board yet, and he's nervous about how can they possibly make their numbers when they let 5 months go by. So he's saying, I got to move really quickly. So his objective is just like you see here. He wants to get somebody on board quickly. He wants to reduce the hiring effort so he can do that. And then there are those people who just want to reduce the cost of hiring. Jeb, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you know what the cost is to hire a new sales rep? Because I know you do a lot around sales gravy.
Yeah, we sure do. It's industry dependent, but generally for a B2B rep, entry level is in the neighborhood of around $2,400. The more experience you get, moving up the chain to say national account executives, you move into the $10,000 to $15,000 range. So generally what you see is around $2,400 for an entry level, $5,000 for mid-level experience, and somewhere in the $7,500 range for an additional that you get in the national account level, you're looking at $10,000 to $15,000.
Right. So with those costs, you might be looking at it saying, all right, if that's what it's going to cost me, maybe I can streamline my costs by streamlining my interview process, not having so many people involved. But then if you hire the wrong people, you're going to spend all that money again. So this is where the trap that people fall into in their interview process. And their result is that they end up with these unqualified sellers or even a poor culture fit, which you might say, well, wow, Kendra, that's kind of odd to see on a slide. But we've seen clients who have hired people in thinking, I want this really aggressive salesperson. They streamline their process, so they cut out having members of their team who might be working with the sales rep actually interview. There may be technical people who are going to work closely with your sales rep to support them when they're identifying what the right solution should be. And so you don't have them interview, and all of a sudden you bring on this really aggressive salesperson who nobody wants to work with. Or vice versa, you don't bring on an aggressive enough person and you're a very aggressive organization and that person is intimidated by the organization. So now we have salespeople that aren't a fit. So the reality is that while it may cost you between $2,400 and $15,000, as Jeb said, to hire, if it's going to cost us that much, we don't want to streamline our interview process. We have to take all the right steps. And again, you may say, well, that sounds pretty basic. The reality is, think about it. The last time you were interviewing a sales rep, did you try and cut your interview process back? Or did you take all the steps? Were you afraid you were going to lose that great rep to somebody else, or that you couldn't take up somebody's valuable time in the interview process? You have to follow your interview process so that you're getting the right sales reps. All right, so the place that, and what I was going to tell you is that if you're lucky, you're going to discover your mistake really quickly if you hire the wrong person, like the wrong culture fit or the wrong skill set. But if you're not, it could take you 6 to 9 months. So now you're going to go through all those costs again, and you've got nobody who is selling for you making that number. So you've got a shortfall. And if you're a sales manager, you know, that means you could miss your number. If you're a business owner, it means that you could miss your projections for the year. So it's a pretty significant pitfall and impact to your organization. So the first step is that you want to start by getting very clear on what you want a sales rep to do. If you're in a mature organization, you know exactly what it is you want a sales rep to do. If you're in a small and mid-sized organization, though, it may be that you're looking to your sales rep to do a whole lot of other things. And a lot of the clients that we work with are in that situation. Suddenly they're thinking, well, I've got that sales rep, and they could help me update the website content. And, they could do some social media tweeting for us and keep them current. They could plan an event for us. They can write that marketing brochure that we've needed. And all of a sudden, we don't have any time for the selling that we need them to do. And so it's not uncommon for business owners especially to assign sales reps marketing activities. But we have to remember, what is it that we really want them to do? If we need them to update the website, and we need social media tweets going out, and we need a new marketing brochure, maybe we need to hire a marketing associate. We don't want a sales rep. But if we need new leads coming in the door and we need cold calling, or we need account management, or we need somebody who's going to help prepare quotes, now we're talking about somebody who really is from the sales team. So get clear in your mind about what is it exactly that you want this person to do. Now, for those of you that have very experienced sales teams with defined responsibilities, in your mind what you need to think about is really what's the rep's role. Are they a hunter? Do we really need a hunter? Or are we passing them leads and we need somebody who's really good at following up and building relationships? Or are we passing leads but we really aren't passing enough leads, so we truly do need somebody who can go out there and prospect? So look at that role and look at that territory that you have and think about what is it that you need for that exact role and that territory that will make you successful. Yes, you may have your job description in place, but you need to set realistic and specific responsibilities for this job role that you are hiring. So if you're a business owner and this is one of your first salespeople that you're hiring, or you've not been successful, think about it from the broad perspective of what sales activities do I want this person doing. If you are an experienced sales manager with a lot of salespeople already on board and you're filling a gap in a territory, think about what do you really need for that territory based on number of leads that you're passing, the types of accounts that you have there. So start thinking about broader than just the role and thinking about that specific territory and what does it need to be successful. And then set those responsibilities so that you've got a good foundation for hiring the right person to do the job. And until you've really thought through this, you can't be sure that you're interviewing for the person that you really need. Okay, so here are some tips for you on strengthening your hiring process. Salespeople can be tricky. Even the most experienced sales managers know how tricky it can be. And so you want to make sure you've got a very strong process in place. Definitely have a pool of candidates. And I'm sad to say that even the most experienced hiring managers I've seen bring in one candidate, interview one person, and extend a job offer. The person fails, and in the back of their mind, they're not even sure why the person failed. And great story for you. One of our clients out of Texas was interviewing for a sales rep position. They were moving into a new target market in the medical industry. They really wanted somebody who had experience selling into medical. They had a pool of 10 different candidates because they'd placed the ad. They'd come in, we were screening through, and we had identified 10 candidates that looked, like they had potential. We hadn't yet started the interview process, so we knew some would fall out in the first interview. Along comes one of their business partners that they work with, not a partner in the company, but someone that they aligned with, that they sold their solutions. And this partner says to them, oh, I know this great sales rep. She's got tons of experience in medical. You really need to interview her. They did one interview, and they said, oh, she's fabulous. We're going to drop all the other candidates. And against my recommendation of saying, hey, let's at least interview a few of these others so we've got somebody to compare to, they went ahead and they hired this one person. And of course, I wouldn't be telling you the story, except 9 months later, she still hadn't sold anything, even though it looked like she was going to be very successful. Now, you know the story of hire quickly, fire just as quickly. I am not a proponent of the hire quickly, because I believe you should go through the process and look at different candidates, but you absolutely should fire quickly. So they should have let her go before 9 months. But the reality is they had this person on board for 9 months, and when they got to that point where they were assessing her, they had nothing to compare to say, why wasn't she as good? If they brought in the other candidates, maybe she would have still been the one they hired, or maybe not. So I really believe that you should have a minimum of 3 different candidates that you're interviewing. Now, recruiters may pass you only one candidate at a time, but I would ask for more because you really need that comparison for them. And then, boy, doesn't it sound basic that you should check references, but how many don't? And what are the references that you ask for? A client that we were working with just the other day, the references they asked for, 2 business references and 1 personal reference. Well, in sales, that doesn't tell us enough. We need actual people, managers that sales reps have worked for. If you're hiring managers, then you want people that those managers worked for, but you really want those references. And then ask for copies of their W-2s so that you can see if they're asking for a base of $90,000 or $70,000, what did they earn last year? We've seen reps that say that they absolutely have to earn 6 figures, and you get their W-2s, and for the last 3 years they earned $45,000. There's a disconnect.
Kendra, this is Jeb, and this W-2, Lori, who's on the webinar, asked a question about that, and so you answered it for her. She said, do you recommend asking them for at least 2 years worth of W-2s? And in our LinkedIn group, the Sales Gravy LinkedIn group, this question of asking for W-2s has been a discussion that's sort of been raging back and forth, and it pops up from time to time because it's kind of controversial. And I can imagine as a candidate, I've never had anybody ask me for my W-2s, and I work for big companies, but it could be a little bit off-putting, especially in in an environment where good salespeople are hard to find. They're difficult to come by, and you may feel pressure not to do that. So, and I don't know if I'm confusing the question, but can you maybe address how you approach that? Because I do believe it's a sensitive subject for most people.
Absolutely, and I know it can feel personal, but it's the primary form of proof that you have that a salesperson truly can sell. So what we recommend is that you forewarn a sales rep that you're going to be asking for that type of information. So you're partway into your interview process. Let's say they've had maybe a couple of interviews with you. Then you start previewing what the rest of the process will be. You know, are you going to have them come in and do some type of formal presentation so you can see their presentation skills or how they could approach their territory? Are they going to interview with some peer salespeople? So what you do is you put it in your preview. So it might be something like, Jeb, it's great, you know, the interview process is going really well. Let me tell you what our next steps are. I'm going to have you interview with some of the salespeople that would be peers to yours. We're going to have you come in and do a presentation about how you think you would attack the territory. And when we check references, one of the things that we will want to see are copies of your W-2s for the last 2 years as a form of reference. So now we've told them, here's what the process is, and we've laid it out there. They may have questions then, or they may wait a little longer, but we've previewed with them what the situation or what the process will be. We have not had salespeople refuse to provide their W-2s. Part of it can be because of the hiring environment right now. Jeb, what have you seen? Do you have any knowledge of that?
I think it's becoming I think in some cases it's becoming more common for people to ask for that information. I think that the interesting thing is there's some debate, especially even at the federal level, over how much employers can do from a background standpoint, credit check, those kind of things with folks. So I haven't experienced it personally, but I do know that it's a conversation that comes up. I do have another question for you around this area, and this question is, when checking references, do you suggest any specific questions that you should ask a previous employer?
So I view the reference checking to be candidate specific. With a salesperson, you know that in checking references, sometimes previous employers are very careful how much they'll give. One of the questions I like to ask for a salesperson is how much support will they need in the sales process to be successful? And usually you can start it with, oh, we want Sally to be very successful. How much support do you think she'll need in the sales process? And so that's where you'll find out that Sally doesn't do a very good job on creating her proposals, or Sally never was able to go out on a sales call on her own. She always had to have her manager or a technical expert who went with her. So I try to couch them from the perspective of, oh, we really want them to be successful, and then ask the question from that perspective. Another one that you might ask is, what training do you feel that Sally will need to be successful, and what management support would you recommend to make her successful? And so now we know where do we think we need training, and we know what type of management style she may require. And some of this will come out in assessments if you assess your candidates, but your references will give another aspect of insight. And then based on where you have concerns about their selling skills, that's where you ask the sales-related questions. And you can even ask about, how many years did they make their quota? But I always try to couch it from the positive. Oh, we really want Sally to be successful. How can you help us make sure? And then if you were to say that there were one thing that she should improve, what's that one thing? Jeb, are there any questions you would add to that?
No, I think you're right, and I think that the part of the key of employer references is listening to what they're not saying, and that's just listening to the non, I guess the non-verbal clues in terms of what they're actually saying, but what their how their emotions are, how they pause, like those kind of things, because it'll tell you a lot, especially if you're talking to a sales manager. If you're talking to someone from HR, they're probably not going to give you much information other than the person's eligible for rehire or not.
And here's another thing that you can do that we recommend for references, and that is, and I cannot think of the name off the top of my head, but there are web-based reference checkers that you can use where the candidate puts in the name of their references, and then a web-based form goes to those contacts to complete. And what's been really interesting is people tend to be very honest in them, even though they're just a form. So the would you rehire, where they might say yes when you ask them over the phone, we've had people actually say no. So we've gotten interesting information in using the web checking forms as well. And they don't replace the personal discussions. I would do it in addition, and they're really pretty inexpensive. And if that's something you want to know the name of, shoot me an email, and I'll give you my email address at the end, but shoot me an email and I'll look it up and send it to you. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But I think checking references multiple ways. W-2s, talking to former managers and peers and maybe even a customer, and then doing it in a web-based format. Those three ways will give you really good insight into who the people are. Okay? And then document your hiring process. A lot of people don't have it documented, and if you don't hire reps frequently, you may forget what were the steps that you did that were good. So take a minute and make sure that you document, who were the people that you had interview, how many people did you have interview, how many candidates did you interview, how did you check their references. Okay. So there are 4 critical elements as we see it to the hiring. We've got the whole interview process. It's based on your job description. Then there are the performance expectations. You want strong performance expectations in place for your sales reps, and I'll show you how you use those. You want a good compensation plan, which we all know, and then we want the onboarding plan. Now, I'm not going to talk about the job description other than to mention that you want it to reflect really what you want that salesperson to do, like we talked about at the beginning. And Jeb and I have had an ongoing discussion around the merits of long job descriptions versus short job descriptions, and it's been really pretty interesting. And here's what I would tell you. If you want to be able to screen the candidates yourself, you want a lot of candidates, and you make the determination as to whether or not you're going to do a first interview, then keep your job description brief. A couple of paragraphs and some bullet points, but not a lot of information. And then when they send their resumes in, you can screen them. Now, we frequently will screen resumes for clients, and I will tell you that I've been able to get it down to like 10 minutes per resume. But if you have 50 resumes coming in, that's a bit of time. But if you've got somebody who can screen them for you, an admin person, and you tell them the 5 things that you're looking for, or the 6 things before your phone interview, you could probably make that go faster. If you want only a few highly qualified people coming in, then post a long, detailed job description. So it really depends on what you want. How many candidates do you want coming into you? So let's talk about our second pitfall then, the non-motivating compensation plan. And yes, I know we're talking about hiring, but we need the right comp plan in place. And if we don't have that, then the sales rep is not going to be motivated even from day one. And one of the challenges that we see, we work a lot with companies that are in the small and mid-market. So in that arena, oftentimes the business owner or the executives are concerned that they're going to pay too much to a sales rep. And they forget that the real goal of a compensation plan is to motivate your sales rep to make their number. Instead, what they're looking to do is to protect the company from overpayment. Things like bluebirds, which is a sales term that says an opportunity just flew in the window and the sales rep got paid for it. Or if the rep isn't selling, I don't want them to be earning anything, so they're trying to write their comp plans to that effect. Well, and that's easy to do. We can protect you from that in a comp plan. And then we don't want to pay too much. They shouldn't earn that much money. But let's think about it. Wait a minute. If the sales rep is selling a lot, then aren't you earning a lot as a company? And really what we need to do is to look to see, are we crafting a compensation plan that we can afford from a contribution margin perspective or a profitability perspective, instead of worrying about, did that sales rep actually earn $150,000 or $175,000 last year, or even $90,000 last year? I will happily pay a sales rep $150,000 on our comp plan, because that means they've well exceeded the quota that I assigned them, and my business is doing really well. So this is what's going through many business owners and sales executives' minds when they're trying to plan the compensation, and they forget that what we actually want to do with our comp plan is to motivate salespeople to achieve their quota. And oh, by the way, if your sales reps don't have targets or quotas, please give them targets, because how else can they know if they're being successful, and how can you know if they're being successful? That's just my side note. I'm a big fan of compensation plans that have quarterly and annual bonuses for achieving quota, because now I'm letting them know making your number is important. And if you sell more transactionally, where you're looking at a monthly basis, you may even put a kicker out there for them on a monthly basis if they make their number. We want them to sell certain solutions or grow customer accounts. We can do that with the compensation plan. We can even get them to do more prospecting with the comp plan, or go out and get renewals to service agreements, or upsell more solutions, increase the average size of the sale, or even continue working for you. So here's a quick story, and I am watching our clock because I want to be sure that we have enough time. We had a client that had a sales rep who was selling over $1 million. Her base was $40,000 with a target income of $55,000. She had, as of September, sold over $1 million. Her quota was $1 million, and she was headed to go beyond. Well, she went and talked to them, and she said, I can't really live on this. I really was hoping that if I was overachieving that I would have a greater commission. Can we do something about the commission plan? And she was getting into strategic accounts, doing some pretty significant deals, well loved by all of her clients. The company came back and said, no, there's nothing we can do. And what happened? She left. She went somewhere else where she got a higher base and more pay. And really all she was looking for, this was the interesting part, when they looked back over it, all she really wanted was another $10,000. So she was being underpaid from the beginning. So you want to look at, what do I have to do to make sure that my top reps aren't going to go to the competition? And you can do this by using things like bonuses. So maybe there's that bonus out there to meet their quota, like I talked about. It doesn't have to be a big one. You have to look within your industry, but look also within what you're already paying your sales reps. For her, her target income was only around $60,000. So giving her an extra $500 because she made her number on a quarterly basis, or an extra $250 because she made it on a monthly basis or something. It's not a huge number. It doesn't have to be necessarily $10,000 because they make their quota at the end of the year. We have to look at it in relation to what their pay scale is today. The other thing is, maybe you want, oh, go ahead.
Oh, Kendra, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get in your way, but I wanted to hit you on the bonuses. Paul's got a question here. I just wanted to catch this before you moved on. He asked, should rewards be given just for meeting quotas or only for exceeding goals? And I think you'll probably answer that in the middle of this, but I thought maybe you should have that while you were going through.
That's good. So, Paul, I think it could be both. I give an example of the meeting their number, but another one you could do that I've seen is if we have a goal of bringing in 2 new clients per month or per quarter, and they achieve that, maybe they get a bonus for that. Or maybe they get a bonus for selling a large deal. So there's all sorts of ways we can use bonuses. And what's nice is you don't have to write them into the comp plan. You can have, I'm going to go all the way to the bottom here. You could have discretionary funds that you don't tell your team are out there. You could have a bucket of $10,000 that you've withheld, for example. And you get a woman like this one who is going to leave, and you could decide we're going to give her a bonus because she made her quota in September. Great job. Or somebody brings in a big account. Or somebody's working really, really hard, but nothing has closed yet. And you know it's going to happen. You know that you want to keep them, so maybe you give them a bonus. So there's lots of different ways, and you can do them as discretionary undisclosed, or you can write them into the comp plan. You can do it either way. And then I was going to share, you can use variable commissions. You do not have to have flat rate commissions. Some of you may say, well, duh, but others of you may say, well, I hadn't thought of that. So if you want them bringing in new clients, maybe they get paid more if they bring in new clients over a certain value. And then, of course, there are the contests. Reps are competitive. So use contests. Maybe it's how many new clients can you bring in, or how many opportunities can you close over $5,000 this month, or over 10, or whatever is the right number for you. So there's a lot of different ways that you can play with your comp plan. Even if you're in a large company where you can't make changes, you can probably get discretionary bonuses or have contests and get those approved. So think about, is your compensation plan going to motivate? And then the other aspect that you want to look at is your compensation plan aligned with the performance expectations and company priorities? One client that we're working with right now has a comp plan in place. He's got a quota set. And when we started doing their performance expectations for new sales reps that he's hiring, we realized that at the performance expectations that he had set, not only would they not meet their quota, but they wouldn't make their target income either. So we looked at it and we said something has to change. And in this case, what we're looking at are the performance expectations. Are they too low? And so we're going back and looking at what have other sales reps done as a comparison. So you definitely want to set performance expectations. And there are 2 types, revenue and activity. Your revenue expectations can be, I am a firm believer in a monthly quota. Even if you're really measuring them quarterly, still give them something to target monthly. And then you could set them against their average sale. When you first hire them, the average sale is going to be lower. When you're done, when they're fully onboarded, then their average sales should be much higher. So you can show that. And then activity expectations. How many sales do you expect? How many calls? How many proposals? How much time are they spending prospecting or in client meetings? And when we work with clients to set them, we actually look at the first 12 to 18 months, depending on how long we think it'll take a person to be fully onboarded. And we set expectations so that, A, your sales rep knows what the expectations are that they're being measured against, and B, you as a sales manager or a business owner have expectations to measure them against. And we found that to be very, very helpful. And then, of course, you want to track and monitor their performance against those expectations in your CRM, and then it's very clear. And if they're not putting it into the CRM, whose problem is that? Theirs, not yours. When you know your expectations, then you can set that motivating compensation plan. Okay, and a couple of comp plan comparisons or considerations for you, and this is more if you are a business owner or you are hiring new reps for the first time. If you are the person doing the primary selling and you're hiring and your sales cycle is 60 days, it's going to take them 90. And if your average sales are $2,500 a month, theirs are probably only going to be $1,200 a month. And even that competitive hire has a ramp-up period. So a few things to think about when you're setting your performance expectations and your compensation plan. So let's take just a brief minute and talk about your onboarding plan. And I could do a whole session just on onboarding because it's a gap many companies have. A lot of times you won't have an onboarding plan because you figure a rep already knows how to sell. They may know how to sell what you sell, and then you're worried that it's going to take too long to put one in place, so we'll just have them follow somebody around. The challenge there is that it can reduce their productivity by as much as 60% while they're learning, and it makes them slower to get to their first sale, and their average sale is actually below what it would be if you trained them. And then there can be situations where they never fully understand how to sell your solutions a year later. We've got one client who 2 years later has 3 salespeople out of his 15 that still don't understand their solutions 2 years later. And it's because they never had a formal onboarding, and they've been trying to figure it out as they go. So my recommendation is that you formalize an onboarding training plan. And you look at 4 different categories. You've got your offerings and all the customer information that you gather in your sales process. You've got the processes, including your sales process, your prospecting, your systems, your CRM system, email, and then your company procedures. This does not have to be a huge program. It could just be that the VP of sales is going to sit down and talk about our sales process with them. And then they're going to shadow a sales rep, and here are the 3 things we want them to find out. And a technical person is going to sit with them and explain this solution. So it doesn't have to be that you've typed it all up and it's in beautiful PowerPoint. It just says, these are the things we're going to make sure that we train them in. Okay. And then, of course, you want to align your onboarding plan with the performance expectations so that you're training them in the things they need to be trained in to sell what you expect them to sell. So make sure you align those. So the 4 critical elements of your hiring success are the job description that defines the responsibilities you want the sales rep to take on. They're the performance expectations that take the job description responsibilities and assign both revenue and activity expectations for the sales rep's whole year, and that's your tool to measure them and for them to measure themselves. And the performance expectations are also the litmus test for your compensation plan. Will they be able to make the number? Will they be able to achieve the target income? And then an onboarding plan that's your strategy that brings all of this together so that you can speed their time to productivity. Now, I'm going to take your questions in just 1 minute, but one thing I also wanted to tell you about is that if you are planning to hire in the next, let's say 120 days, so in the next 4 months, we do have a hiring program. It's called a Master Series that we're running in May. And if these are issues that you have, I would encourage you to look at it. This is one of my favorite programs because the managers and the business owners that come get so excited about the job descriptions that they put in place and the interview process that they finally feel like, oh my gosh, I've got the right process, and we look at compensation plans and what's the right compensation plan, and we set the performance expectations, and we develop a detailed onboarding plan so they actually have their plan in place, so they get out of it and they've got everything they need to bring that salesperson up to speed. So if these are gaps that you feel you have and it's something that you have set in your mind that you'd like to address, I would encourage you to look at this, because we're starting it on May 15th, and it's an 8-session program. We're meeting twice a week, and we're going to step through putting every single thing in place, and these are the 8 sessions, so you can see. So you get done with it, and you've got all the components you need to onboard a salesperson. And right now we have 25% off it, and you can see at the bottom of the screen, klagroup.com/program/hire. And if you use coupon code EARLYBIRD, it will give you 25% off the program. So, as I said, one of my favorites, and it's a master series. So if this is a problem, come. I'd love to help you with it. So, Jeb, let's open it up for questions.
Okie dokie. So the first question, if it's okay with you, I'm going to take this first question, and you can if you want to throw in your 2 cents, it'd be great. Sandra asked questions. She says, I want to go back to the beginning. So for a small company, what's the best place or places to find sales reps and to get resumes and candidates? So
good. You should answer
Sandra,
that one.
I think I can. Sandra, I'm the CEO and founder of SalesGravy.com, and SalesGravy is the most visited sales employment website on the planet, and this is what we do. We help small companies like yours get in touch with and find salespeople, and we do it through a variety of the ways, but the most cost-effective way is to just post the job on SalesGravy, and our account executives will give you a hand with getting your job copy right on SalesGravy, following the program that Kendra laid out. If you're a KLA client, there's actually special pricing that you can't get on the website. And if you want, Sandra, you can connect with either Kendra or myself. My email address is really, really easy. It's JEB, that's Jeb, at salesgravy.com. That's Jeb at salesgravy.com. And I'll get you in touch with the account manager that works with KLA clients, Kim Lilly. But we're really good at that. Now, there's a bunch of other places as well, and one of the things that I recommend, especially with looking for salespeople, is that you use a variety of prospecting methodologies. It's no different than what I would recommend for a rep, a sales rep who said, how do I prospect for new clients? I would say, try different things, use different options so that you statistically you have a better chance of connecting with the right rep. And Kendra will talk about this in a moment, and I'm going to ask her a couple of questions about sales hiring trends. But the sales hiring trends right now, as the economy begins to really emerge from this economic problem that we've had, and you can see through some of the profit numbers that big companies have been laying out, companies are actively chasing salespeople. So as a small business, your ability to compete with the larger companies is going to be even harder. So it's going to make sense for you to look at multiple places, and we'll be happy to sort of share those with you. Kendra, any comments on that?
I would comment on the end. Let me say we do use SalesGravy, and it's one of the places when we train this program that we recommend that people post. We work with a lot of companies that are hiring their first sales rep, or they've only got, say, 10 or 15 sales reps, and they're not exactly getting it right. And you can compete with the big companies. Usually you're looking for something more, and there are greater opportunities for a sales rep in your organization than the big company because they get pigeonholed. So there's a lot that you can offer as a small company, but it is very competitive right now. I will tell you, we were just recently interviewing for a client sales managers, and they're a small company in Arkansas, and one of their candidates was also interviewing with HP to be a sales manager. But the difference in what he would have done with that company as a sales manager versus HP as a sales manager were tremendous. And so you can compete, but you have to be aggressive.
You have to be aggressive. You absolutely have to be aggressive. If you're holding back right now, it's going to hurt you. Angie asked this question. She says, when defining expectations, she says, should you also sit down with the rep and define the consequences of missing those expectations?
What we suggest is that when you hire a rep, you let them know that there's a probationary period. So, it may be 90 days. That's the typical of what we see. And you discuss that these are the expectations that we look for from our sales reps. And if you're not meeting them, then we'll have to talk about why. I don't think right from the beginning you say we're going to fire you. Unless that's the culture of your company, then by all means let them know that right from the beginning. But most companies, that's not their culture. So just let them know these are the performance expectations that we're going to be measuring you by. And then use them right from the start. So, first day you sit down and you review them again. And I actually suggest you review them as part of the interview process so they know what is expected. Then first day you sit down as part of it and go, okay, let's review the expectations again. And then in their first month, on a weekly basis, when you meet with them maybe in the Monday morning meetings, you review where they are so that they know that you're watching it. And once you set a pattern of reviewing it with them, then they become very comfortable with the fact that you're monitoring it.
Okay, excellent. This is a great question from Paul. He says, I know we're talking about different sales categories, but do you recommend pursuing salespeople from outside of your area of expertise or stay within the category? Not all sales experts are experts in all categories and may not be able to translate to a new category. For example, he's in print media. And if it's okay with you, Kendra, I'm going to take a first stab at that. I'm just going to give you a foundation to work on. But Paul, one of the things that we've seen at Sales Gravy is we have seen, for example, medical device and pharmaceutical companies coming and looking for B2B salespeople. Not because they're looking for people who have a particular skill set in pharmaceutical or medical device. They're looking for people who have a particular skill set in knocking on doors and dealing with adversity and rejection and getting an audience in front of someone who can buy. So in that case, it's the skill set they're looking for, not necessarily the industry expertise. And Kendra, I think from your standpoint, and we've talked about this before in the IT area, that may just be the opposite. It may take you too long to train somebody who's outside that expertise. So maybe you can share some of the things that your clients deal with in looking for people either inside or outside their particular industries or industry niche.
What I would say is I agree with what Jeb said, that you can go outside the category. You also want to look at the sales process and what responsibilities you want the sales rep to do in the sales process. So when we run this How to Hire program, it's the first thing we do in session 1. If you are hiring a sales rep and you expect them to do everything in the sales process on their own, from finding the lead all the way to closing it, then it could be harder because they need to learn the products to be successful. A lot of times in the high-tech companies and even in medical device companies like Jeb is talking about, you'll have a technical expert that you can bring along in the middle of the sales process. So what you really need is a salesperson who can find a lead and recognize needs, question to uncover them, but then when we talk about the actual solution or we're putting the proposal together, there's somebody else we can call on and bring with us. And so in that case, you absolutely could look outside your industry, and you want to look for people who have those skills that you need, like Jeb talked about. So a lot of it comes down to the sales process itself and what your expectations are of that sales rep in that sales process.
And one other dimension is what kind of background do they come from? They may come from your particular niche, and they may have the expertise you're looking for from a product or service standpoint, but they've come out of a really big company environment, and you're trying to put them in a very small company environment.
Oh yeah, that doesn't work.
They may not be able to make that switch either.
Right. Yeah. In a lot of times, because we do work with technology as much as we do, we'll get people who say, "Oh, I've got this sales rep who used to work for HP or they used to work for IBM and they were great. I want to hire them." They will probably fail in a small company environment if they haven't been somewhere else before, because they just don't have the support system. They don't have the name recognition. There's just so many factors And it's so different working for a small company after having been with a large one. So that's a good one to bring up too, Jeb.
So one more question. Susan says, what do I do about searching for B2B cold calling reps, and are there different resources you suggest? And Susan, I go back and say, send me an email. It's jeb@salesgravy.com. That's jeb@salesgravy.com. Depending on where you're hiring and how many people you're hiring, SalesGravy can definitely help you find those folks. It's a very difficult person to find right now, depending on how you structured your comp. And I suggest that you sign up for Kendra's course. The hardest person to find right now is someone who's willing to get on the telephone every day and make cold calls. And the compensation, the expectations, how you're structuring your copy that you go out and advertise with, all of those things are incredibly important, as well as your screening process, because there's a lot of people who will say, I'm willing to do that, but their background says that they're completely unwilling to do that. And we at SalesGravy, we hire people who are B2B salespeople who get on the telephone and make outbound cold calls, and it's a hard person to keep on board from a retention standpoint as well. So two things: I would sign up for more Kendra's courses, and get in touch with me, jeb@salesgravy.com, and I'll get you connected with an account manager that can talk a little bit more about what your specific needs are, and then we can make some other recommendations as well.
And I would add to that, most of the clients that we work with are looking for that hunter position. Like I said at the beginning, they come to us because they want to do lead generation, and they want one of two paths, and one of them is hiring. And you can find them. We've got one client who's particularly good at recruiting employed sales reps who he has watched actually try to sell to him, and he's liked their process. And he has opted to train them in their solutions because he knew they had the prospecting skills that he needed. Because if you get a good one, you want to keep them. And then as Jeb said, it can be hard to retain them. So you really do want to, when you're setting up performance expectations, maybe look at what's their career path. Do they have to stay in that role all the time, or do they grow into a broader role so that they're not just doing cold calling? And we've done that with a lot of clients where, after a certain time period, that person moves on. Maybe they train the other person, but they move into more of an outside role or a broader role.
Excellent. We're going to take one more question, and then I'm going to give you this question. I'm going to give you one follow-up question to sort of end our webinar with. So Michael says, we're having a tough time recruiting salespeople because the CEO insists that salespeople work out of one of our offices and not from home. He says that most good salespeople I've interviewed work from home sometime during the week. Any suggestions that I can tell my boss? And Michael, I have a lot of empathy with you, because all of our salespeople work from home, and we've in fact we had an office, and we found that we could save money by closing our office because most people wanted to work at home. So I get that. Kendra, what are your suggestions? And here's my follow-up question, then I'm going to let you just have the last word, is I wanted you just to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the trends that you're seeing in the marketplace relative to sales hiring. So, and maybe these two things come together when you answer Michael's question.
Absolutely. So, Michael, part of what I would agree with Jeb, we want our salespeople out in the field or on the phone with no distractions, and often the office can be a distraction. If they're out in the field anyway, why do we care? Really what the concern is that the manager has is, how can I be sure they're doing their job? So if you've set performance expectations that you are measuring against and you're monitoring that, especially if you're using a CRM and they have to put in their calls, they have to put all that information in there, you've got something you can show to your boss. Now, could they fake it and put calls in? Absolutely. But usually you catch them in about a week when they've done that. And it's real easy because all you do is ask them questions about some of the calls that they've had. And I'm sorry, but you don't get voicemail every single time. So you have to have some real conversations. But it really stems back to his concern about, are they going to do the job? And so if you've got strong performance expectations in place, you can have that person work from home, and you monitor the performance expectations. And you may sit down with the boss and say, let's try it with one salesperson. This is the trend in sales. And it's the trend because they're more successful, and it's been proven that people actually tend to work more hours if they work from home than if they work from an office because it's accessible to them. So try it with the performance expectations. And then on the trends, Jeb is going to share with me all of your email addresses. And if you haven't seen it, Sales Gravy did a sales hiring trends report that we have shared with all of our clients who are hiring, because it's all around the hiring trends. And what we're seeing is that small companies can compete. Small companies are looking for salespeople. They're being careful. We are still seeing from a base salary perspective that you can hire sales reps somewhere between 40 as a base up to, bases of 90 if you're in some of the big companies. So you still don't have to break the bank to hire a sales rep. It is taking people we're seeing 3 to 5 months to fill a position with the right candidate. Jeb, what are you seeing in the amount of time to fill?
It's three to sometimes going longer, sometimes into 6 weeks, and it's one of the reasons. Actually, it's one of the reasons why we extended our single job postings to 90 days on Sales Gravy, because the sales hiring cycles are getting a little bit longer, and you've got to get multiple clients in, and it's not as easy as it was, say, even 2-3 years ago to post a job and get 10 inquiries immediately. It takes a little bit longer.
And we're seeing a lot of competitive hires or hiring away from other companies. But Jeb said 6 weeks. I would tell you we've seen some positions stay open as long as 5 months because they've not found the right candidate. And in that instance, that's where I usually will counsel them, are they being too picky on what they're looking for, what's really happening, especially if they interview a whole bunch of candidates and they never extend an offer. That's where you want to say, do we really want to hire or don't we? So those are a few of the trends that I'm seeing. The other thing is we happen to have a number of clients who are in more rural areas all of a sudden, and they're hiring people and asking them to move, and they're getting people who will move to their areas because of the quality of life. So that's been an interesting trend that we've noticed. But I'm conscious of our time because we're a little bit after, and I'm thrilled that all of you stayed on and you've asked as many questions as you have. We will send you the Sales Gravy sales hiring trends, because there have been really some excellent ones here on everything from where to source your talent to the availability of the talent, to what we just talked about, that hiring velocity. So if you haven't seen it, definitely you'll want to download that and read it. And if hiring is a priority for you, I would strongly encourage you to look at our master series on how to hire and onboard great IT salespeople. Now, I didn't mention it. I know it says IT. We have people who attend who are not in the IT environment, and I will work with you to make sure that you are getting your performance expectations that match your industry, so you don't have to worry if you want to attend and you're going, well, maybe it's only for IT. It's not. What we've found is you need the same things in place regardless of the industry that you're in, as long as you're hiring B2B salespeople. So I love this program and would love to have you. We just have had such great results for clients with it. So do check that out. So with that, let me go to, I did promise to tell you what my contact information is so that you can email me if you wanted to know the name of the reference company that we've talked about. That here is our contact information, and I want to say thank you, everybody, for coming. Jeb, do you want to say any last words?
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.